Hi, and welcome to the Handbag Designer 101 podcast with your host, Emily Blumenthal, handbag designer expert and handbag fairy godmother, where we cover everything about handbags from making, marketing, designing, and talking to handbag designers and industry experts about what it takes to make a successful handbag. Welcome, Sarah Wells of Sarah Wells Handbags. Creative director, president, CEO, founder, all of that.
The whole thing.
Welcome to Handbag Designer 101, the podcast. Very excited to have you. I know we have connected in the past, but let's just dive right in. Now, we were talking before, and you had said that you're not a handbag designer by trade, which makes you more of my people than pretty much anybody else who is. But at this point, I've kind of crossed over to the other side. But I love how, you had mentioned, and we can talk about this whole construct of imposter syndrome and what that means, and going into something when you're not designed by trade and what that means, but having an idea, pursuing it, following through, and then 11 years later, fancy that, we're here today chatting. So where are you from? What did you study? All that good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I had mentioned to you before we started that you have been with me this whole journey, actually, whether you knew it or not. Your book was the first gift that I received. As we will talk about imposter syndrome later, I was really struggling to see how I would make a transition into a handbag company from where I was. And I'm really grateful to all the great information that you shared in that book. So thank you. And I'm honored to be here. It really all has come full circle this year, which is exciting. So I grew up in a very small town in upstate New York.
What?
It's called Owego, often confused with Oswego, not quite that far upstate.
And not Ossining.
So, no, yeah. More near like Syracuse, Binghamton, that region. And very snowy, cold, all of that. I had an amazing childhood there. I have parents who are just the most thoughtful, incredible advocates in mental health, social services, and we just had a really neat upbringing. But as you're going to find out, nothing to do with handbags, right? I was not in the fashion capital. This was not, it was not on my radar at all at that time as a child. But what I did know I wanted to do was move to big old Washington, D.C. I had that plan since I was in elementary school. There's pictures of me in front of American University in elementary school, like this is where I'm going. I knew my plan. So I'm someone who's always had a plan.
Right.
As we'll talk about, I really deviated from it, although maybe not in the end. So came down to Washington, D.C. for college. I studied political science and women's studies, continued on graduate school, got my master's in public policy and women's studies, started in the nonprofit sector, ended up leading national nonprofit organizations in healthcare, women's empowerment, aging, all sorts of really important policies.
And you were young to talk about aging.
Yeah. I was an executive director in my 20s of a national organization. So I've really been fortunate to have some incredible experiences, which ultimately helped me in this business that we can talk about, like fundraising, business plans, marketing, social media, building a website. All of those things really did happen in the nonprofit sector, but again, no handbag experience.
Right.
So it wasn't until 2011 when I had my first baby, who's turning 13 in 3 weeks, which is just amazing.
A boy and a girl?
Girl. I have 2 girls.
Oh, bless your cotton socks.
I know.
You're going to need more than that with 2 girls that are teen, tween, and all that.
It's a whole new era. It really is.
Oh, my God.
So I went back to work on Capitol Hill in this nonprofit space. And I was in really formal meetings. DC was still pretty formal back then. So people were in like the black business suits. And I was walking into those meetings with like an armful of breast pump supplies. I had the manufacturer bag, which was like the only thing on the market then. And it was really not what
and that they give you at the end. It's like you get
it's not really a handbag.
You're given it basically at the hospital where they give you this shiny bag that you can put it all in.
It's a vessel. It's a vessel to like get your stuff to and from, right? But it's not designed from any sort of functional, at the time, any functional.
I always say that men design those bags.
Yeah. So half the time it was in that, but that never fit everything I needed because I was going to the gym, I was commuting on the metro, I had to have sneakers and high heels. I had all this stuff. So I had all these breast pump parts and pump pieces, often kind of like milk drops and spills and things all over.
Yeah.
So I'd walk into these meetings in Capitol Hill and I would be met with laughter, some camaraderie. But at the time, more than a decade ago, there was a little less like talk in the public space about supporting breastfeeding at work. It wasn't, it was sort of just,
even women who had been through that were even less supported purely out of principle because no one supported them.
Right. Exactly. I could tell, you could feel that it was the beginning of a new chapter, but we were at the very beginning. So I did find some camaraderie, like, oh, I did that. I totally feel for you. Good job. But there was some laughter too. Like, here comes Sarah with her milk machine. Here comes Sarah with her milk bag. And
did you ever get anybody imitating the noise?
Oh, yeah.
That was one thing. Like, oh, here we go. Me or. Yeah.
It was jokes all the time.
Yeah.
And I tell you, this threw me off a little because I was trying to meet my breastfeeding goals, which was hard enough as it was trying to do this. And there wasn't really like online communities or a whole lot of
the pressure that we put ourselves through beyond that, and the body bouncing back and sanity and this faux fiction work-life balance, which it's like you just need to survive. It's called survival. That's it.
You're exactly right. Let alone that's what people react to when you walk into a meeting. You're about to lead in front. It might be on a challenging topic, a controversial topic. You might be advocating for something that you really want Congress to work on, or it was a hard start coming back from leave and all that mental health and pressure and everything. And then have to feel like I have to hide this other part.
And not to mention the hormones.
Yeah, all of it. Lack of sleep, the whole thing. And I had a really supportive workplace, but I was out in the public and meeting with all these other colleagues who were not necessarily within my own workplace.
Right.
So I actually was in a new moms group at the time. And one of the really fun things about Washington, D.C. is everybody that you meet around here has the coolest, most impactful type positions. So I'm sitting around in this group and I'm thinking, woe is me, hormones, tired, all this stuff. And like the person next to me does Middle East peace negotiation. The other person next to me works for the Senate. I mean, these are like amazing heavy hitter moms. And I told them my story and I started kind of, outside the group, just mentioning to them on the side, I wish there was a better way to be professional and pump. And it was the moms that were the professionals going through the same exact thing at that moment in these forward-facing jobs that said, why don't you do it?
Yeah.
And so it was really
this weird, awkward, why not you?
Yes. And there were I could give you a lot of reasons at the time. What do I know about handbags?
Yep.
How would you manufacture this? How do you construct it? How do you get a sample? But what about the career I've put a master's degree into? And I'm at like the peak of jumping off point to where I want to go. Why? How could I do this with that? How would I do it all? That was the beginning of, I'm a very self-confident person, but that felt like an imposter moment because it felt at the time like it was going to be such a career shift. In the end, it really has not been for me. It's been really all interrelated, which I'll talk about. But that was really the beginning of it all. And from there, I just took little tiny baby steps towards this, finding out about a trademark. I took all the local business strategy classes and business planning classes. I really tried to first hone in on the business side. I felt a little more comfortable in that space. And one of the things that I would say to anybody that really served me well through that time is rather than spending my life savings to hire other people to get the idea, I learned about it myself.
Yep.
I took every webinar on handbag design I could find. I read every great book that was there in handbag design. And I didn't expect to become an expert in that space, but I wanted to be able to converse with the people who I was going to be manufacturing with. I wanted to understand about textiles. I wanted to feel empowered and not imposter as I went through the process, which was amazing in the end because all of those people were connectors.
Right.
They all helped me not only learn, but also find my way through the process of bringing this to life.
No, it's so funny being someone having been in this handbag space for a pretty long time and teaching this and teaching students just the basic fundamentals of entrepreneurship, plus with the incubator I ran and now this master class, it's so funny. And then the only reason why I'm referencing all of that is much like you were saying, every little piece of information, even as you with this journey, it arms you with a little bit more information in terms of how best to present your information to that audience. And I can't even tell you how many designers, oh, I've hired a salesperson, I've hired a publicist, I have hired this person, that person. And the amount of money you throw away when you need to understand that learning curve. And it's more cost effective when it's on you than when you outsource it to everybody else, because one way or another, you're never going to know if you screw up or made mistakes, and they're not actually mistakes. It's that sunk cost of $10,000 plus that regardless of whatever you do, you're going to lose it, and you have to accept it going in, that whatever it is, even if it's time value of money lost in terms of things you could have been doing and making up for that money, there's going to be a loss because you have to learn what you're doing. So I applaud these efforts. And trying to, I have like literally every handbag book that's ever been made, because whenever one comes out, I'm like, I need to buy it. Is there something else I don't know? And it's like being a doctor or a lawyer. You still need to stay current on what's going on.
That also is the fun part.
Yeah.
I look back on this, and I think if I had skipped over that and paid this person and that person, and not only would I have had likely a lot of those losses, because it's hard out of the gate to know who the right person is, or for people to be in your head as you're coming up with your project. But also it did chip away at that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
It built my confidence. I built a network. I was having other handbag designers, other people in the space saying, this is cool. This is innovative. Yeah. What a neat idea. I wish I had this when I was a mom. Yeah. This was giving me, building that confidence. So I absolutely did have to enlist help, people who are experts. My sewing skills are nil. So I had someone actually, sew the sample. But what I asked him to help me with when he was doing that is explain to me, what are you using to do this? How are you cutting the pattern? How are we doing it? What's the why? Right. Explain every step of it so I get it. And then the other thing I would say to any entrepreneur in this space is, now that I've had a decade plus, there are up moments and down moments. And when you're in a down moment and you can't afford to pay these people to do this for you, you are going to be so grateful you know how to do it yourself.
Yep.
So there is a lot I don't enjoy doing. Like, I really don't like the financial side of it. I would rather not do bookkeeping. I don't like any of that, but I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And if I have to scale down, say during a pandemic or whatever the situation is, I know that I can run my QuickBooks. I can, probably even at this point, get on the sewing machine a little bit if I have to. Like, there's a lot that I can do. And that really equips you to ride the wave of business and to train other people on your team to do the same.
So how did you go about getting your first sample? And I would love to, and I always grapple with this, and I talk to people about this, about naming the brand after yourself. And, is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Is it an idea? I mean, is it like naming your kid, Junior? Is it really fitting? Tie back to the DNA of who your brand is and what it's about. So how did you determine, even the bag that you're speaking about, once you're out of that phase, you don't need to pump, you don't need to carry that. Like, by my third kid, funnily enough, I developed a baby bag with a celebrity stylist, costume designer, and I was obsessed with it. And it was so cool, and coolest materials, coolest interiors. Everything about it was amazing. I had the straps to go to the stroller. By my second kid, I was like, this is the dumbest goddamn thing I've ever thought of. The pockets are too deep. I can't wear it. I can't put it on a stroller. And at the same time with two kids. And by my third kid, I carried everything in a Ziploc. It was like down to the PMS bag that you have as an adult. I don't need to take 80 pads and this and that. It's like 3 things and you're done. And how are you able to equate that? Because if your kids are this old, how can you still say the needs and wants of this customer I can still look after? So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. You've asked so many great questions. Let me dive in. So dive away. So you asked first about the sample. So I did hire a US-based handbag designer, a man who has a very small batch, really custom crafted.
How'd you find him? Was he local to DC?
It wasn't LinkedIn. No, it wasn't LinkedIn, but it was through like one of the online forums related to one of the handbag classes that I was taking. Someone had recommended someone who's recommended someone. Yep. Something like that, whatever, or the sort of early social media version of finding him that way. And what I liked about him is just like his utter attention to every detail. And again, I wanted to learn every detail. So I didn't want to start with just throwing it abroad and seeing what I got back. I wanted to really start with someone who would work through the communication of the design. So we did that together, and we had a prototype that he made. And I went to China. So I told everyone at work, no one knew anything about this at work. I told everyone at work I was going on vacation to China. And I did go to vacation to China.
As one does.
Yes.
How did you explain to your husband and small children, like, hey, by the way, guys, I'm off to China. I'm pursuing this. I'm not going to be here for 2 weeks with a baby. And my vacation time that I know we could have used for something else, I'm using for me. So how did you, how did you grapple with all that?
At that point, I only had Maddie, and she was just about a year-ish old.
Ah, she's fine.
Yeah. And my parents came down and they were super supportive of the whole thing. I have to say, my family has always taken this seriously. No one has joked about it. They have fully believed in it. You know, statements like, you're going to get it done. Obviously, you'll do it. They were really behind me. My husband actually came to China with me. And one of the right off the bat is we would walk into these manufacturing meetings. I took my prototype and I said, make me a counter sample at all these places that I had found through people who had recommendations. Some were just terrible factories and some were great. And every room we walked in, they talked to Greg. And in every room we walked in, Greg said, talk to Sarah. Sarah's in charge. Like, I'm here. I want to learn. I want to get it. You know, Sarah's obviously going to be bouncing all of this off of me.
Like, I'm here for the fun.
Right. I'm here for the fun. And also, so I get it when she's asking me for my opinion on things, or we always have really great sessions together, just sort of talking through ideas that I have. But he would always redirect people back to talk to me, which was amazing. And that was such a pivotal time. I found my factory that way. I'm still with the same factory from that time in creating the relationship. But it was super important to me. Again, this is something I would say is a value all the way through my business, of knowing every part of my business. I physically wanted to walk the factory floor. I've gone back 6 times since. Every time the factories had to move or expand, I go, where are we? Who's working there? What are the conditions? Where are we getting our supplies from? Who are the people? I've been lucky that the sort of leadership of the factory has been the same this whole decade. So I've kept that connection going.
Well, women are historically loyal to a fault, possibly.
Yes.
You know, like, you know, okay, the duties are going up from China. That's okay. I still know the people. I still feel comfortable. And that level of loyalty. Yeah. You know, I know, like, Julie Dean of the Cambridge Satchel Company, that was a 2-parter, but it was fascinating. She had something similar and opened up a local factory and started subsidizing the community. And then the factory itself started knocking her off in-house in plain sight. And same thing. Well, you're a woman. What do you know? Best of luck. And she showed up with the truck the next day and pulled all her stuff and started her own factory. So, you know, you got to be the one who drives that ship.
You do. You have to. You do have to.
If you ever wanted to start a handbag line and didn't know where to start, this is for you.
Living proof that independent designers can make it big.
Emily Blumenthal, who is one prime example.
If you had dreams of becoming a handbag designer and didn't know where to start, this is for you. If you have a handbag brand and are in need of strategy and direction, this is for you. I'm Emily Blumenthal, handbag fairy godmother and handbag designer expert, and this is Handbag Designer 101, the masterclass. Over the next 10 classes, I will break down everything you need to know how to make, market, and manufacture a handbag. Broken down for you that you'll not only skip steps in that handbag building process, but also save money in that learning curve. For the past 20 years, I've been teaching at the top fashion universities in New York City, created the Handbag Awards, and also the Handbag Designer 101 podcast. I'm going to show you, like I have countless brands, from sketch to sample to shelf, whether you're just starting out and don't know where to begin, or even if you have a handbag line and just need some strategic direction, the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass is just for you. So let's get started, and you will be the creator of the next It Bag. Join me, Emily Blumenthal, with the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass.
The one thing I'll say is I think while, you know, again, no handbag background before this, working in nonprofits where every dollar has to be stretched immensely.
And accounted for.
Stretched. Everybody's like giving unpaid hours all the time. Like, I know how to be scrappy. And so what I have done through that really wonderful factory relationship is I've used my nonprofit mentality of how can we cut costs without cutting quality? How can we renegotiate this? What are creative ways that we can combine this with this? And I think that has served me well. I mentioned earlier that while I think a lot of those skills from nonprofit advocacy and running organizations certainly came with me here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. You always have to evaluate it. And how would you evaluate it if you didn't know what you were in, what you were involved in? So I've always wanted to know exactly what I was involved in.
Yeah.
So that was a pivotal trip for us. And that's where I placed my first really tiny order of the bag that is no longer with us, because very similar to what you're saying, I look up back at that now and I say, oh my gosh, like the whole breastfeeding landscape, the fashion landscape, like the price point, the materials, absolutely everything has changed since then. I would never sell that bag now, but that bag was what jump-started my entire business. So it was wonderful at the time, but everything has evolved. And I'll talk in a second about how I've evolved with that as a not breastfeeding anymore.
I think, as designers, especially when you are creating a product that depends on something else, like my first bag when I knocked myself off was an iPod holder. And then it was to hold a phone that was a flip phone. And then all of a sudden, there were 16 different sizes of iPods that I could not account for. And the phones started to get bigger. And then I'm like, well, how am I supposed to develop a solutions product when the solution itself keeps evolving? And I need to make sure I create a product that can work with the changes and not me having to constantly time value a business, labor, keep saying, okay, guys, stop. They're taking that breast pump out of business. They've cut that one. Now they have an efficient one. They have the double, there's like the Ferrari of breast pumps that exist now. So,
It is. You absolutely. So you're having to constantly evolve it to the technology. One thing that I'm really proud of is I've worked on creating very deep relationships within the space, within the industry. So I am friends with those breast pump companies. So I know what's generally, they, don't show all their proprietary information, but I generally know where people are headed in enough time to really evolve my products to go in that direction. And so I worked really hard in the beginning of not being in any way oppositional. Many of them have come out with bags, but I still maintain those partnerships. Those are partnerships. Some have come out with bags and then come back around and partnered with me on bags. Like I've kept those relationships open because it really does ultimately serve me and it serves the moms that we're all sort of synced up and things work together. They fit in the bag and that, we can collaborate. We reach more people.
No, it's a friends close, enemies closer situation. You have to, and especially kindness and recognizing like, well, I can't be adversarial with people who are providing the product that essentially are going to go back to the sale of my bag. So how can I help you?
I'm so excited about those products. I only had really one option to choose from. I had no choice back then. This was the portable pump and that was it. And it absolutely serves the mom community that I care so deeply about to have different price points, wearable pumps, portable pumps, hospital grade pump. Like I'm thrilled for that. And it gives me a broader range of bags to make. It just exploded in what we can offer from tiny to large to all over the place. But I think ultimately all of that competition and all those people entering the marketplace have absolutely improved it for moms. So I think that's been awesome. So in terms of trying to choose the name, so again, I think this is along the same line. I never thought, well, actually, I should say I had one idea way back when, but I really quickly got onto the idea of just naming it after myself because I really didn't want this to be anything but advocacy. In fact, I remember telling my mentor early on, am I going to give up everything I care about in terms of advancing women's empowerment and advancing women's health by doing this? We were about to make the order for the bags. And I just said to my mentor, what am I doing? I have never worked in for-profit. If anything, in nonprofits, a lot of times felt on the other team for-profits. What am I about to do going into business? And she had gave me amazing advice to just stay true to what my passion is and find a way to bring that advocacy into all that I did. And I thought, I'm going to name it Sarah Wells and just be who I am. And as anyone who follows my social media knows, I'm quirky and I like to be funny and silly. And I really have kept sort of my personality in the design of the bags, in the marketing of the bags. Again, my advocacy voice, I slip that in whenever I can. I say, here's a great new bag and pumping rights at work. Let's talk about rights at work, right? So I am that company. And I think that was great because if I had put another really cool, flashy name on it, to me, it would have taken a step away for what I was trying to do into just being a handbag business. And I really saw this as being much broader than that.
You were saying mentor, and it's interesting because when I was developing my brand, I used to say I was mentor shopping because I was so so very desperate to find somebody. And I ran into this issue, and I started my handbag brand when I was getting my MBA. And I thought, for sure, I'll be able to find a supportive woman in the business or a supportive woman in finance. And I went to every single fashion organization. I tried to find people who were older per se. And I ran into this issue every single time that it was like the over underqualified. Like, I can't help you. You've done all the work already. And I'm like, but I don't have these connections, or I'm stuck in this constant, now what? What should I do now? And they're like, well, it looks like you figured it out. You got that far. And it was always so disappointing because I was so desperate. And then I just, like anything, I just came to terms like, okay, well, I guess this is on me to figure it out. So how lucky you were. But, back in that time, at least where I was here in New York City, I couldn't find anybody. And there were no real support groups, and there were no real anything. Like, even, when I had my first kid, like the very first mom group came up, and I was like the second generation for that. And they were like, oh, this is so novel and wild. Like, who knew? So
Absolutely. I feel really lucky that I found her. In fact, I found her for the very similar reasons you just said. I actually was talking to an organization that provides mentors. They put me on a couple of calls with men, not in the handbag industry, but that didn't matter to me as much.
It's agnostic.
I was really more right. But they put me on with some men, older men, and I had calls with them, like lovely, nice people, but I could not relate. I was not going to get what I needed, the connections. And I kept going back to the organization saying, this is not a fit. This is not a fit.
Can you find me one more person?
And they said, you know what, we're going to put you on with somebody who's on, I think she was on their board of directors at the time, to see if she can identify anyone that might be a good fit for you. This is, way pre-pandemic. So people were not doing virtual, like Zoom type stuff, but maybe we can,
like Skype.
Maybe we can get you somebody outside of DC that might be possible.
Right.
So I actually got on with Nancy and we talked through it. And at the end of the call, she said, unequivocally, I want to be your mentor.
Oh.
And then we talked every other week, every month for 10 years.
That's amazing.
And she was just phenomenal. But that path was very similar. Had I not landed in Nancy's care, I think that I probably would not have found a mentor. And she has been absolutely instrumental to the entire process.
That's amazing. Yeah. I want to ask you about, because the product you're selling and, Bye Bye Baby was huge and now it's not. Babies R Us was huge, then it's not. How are you able, and it wasn't called D2C back then. It was, you're building a website and finding customers. Like, all these things didn't have names. You weren't an entrepreneur. You were someone who had your own business. These weren't collaborations. They were partnerships, like these, vintage terms. How are you able, because obviously you recognized early on the value of community. How are you able to, from a retail and strategic growth perspective, how did you, because obviously when you start, the end goal is I need to be in all these top retailers if you didn't know any better. So how did you handle this whole flow to where you are now?
Yeah. So I started out with a website. I put some, 6 months of investment in getting that so that people could buy directly on my site, and quickly realized that I was going to be all consumed on that side of it and not building the people following. So at the time, Amazon was really just new, emerging out of just books and into all the other things. This was very brand new for everybody.
Vintage.
But I had an opportunity to send my bags to Amazon warehouses, which people do now, but back then was really novel.
Yeah.
And I had an account manager that was provided to me at the time.
Like
and
a
human being in Seattle, and worked with me. And I said, you know what I'm going to do for, I think it was maybe a period of a year. I'm going to switch my website to direct people to check out on Amazon and not take orders. I'm not going to fill orders. I'm just going to ship to Amazon. And the reason I'm going to do that for a year is so that I can work on building the community, finding the people, hit the ground, boots on the ground, get out there. I went to trade shows. I went to back then people did a lot of those mom shows, like you go learn about
city moms and all that.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I did a lot of that. And Facebook was the hot thing. So it was getting on Facebook Lives with different influencers and educators. And I really was able to set aside the how to build and drive traffic to the site, or how to deal with a sales platform and payment provider and and fulfillment and all of that. I let Amazon do that. And then as I started to build a following and had more bags to offer, I went in a split model where you could then shop on my website or you could go to Amazon. And Amazon, I have been with Amazon that entire decade. I have written white papers to Amazon on small business growth and development. I've had a partnership with Amazon for the whole decade. So now I do a tremendous amount of sales there as well as on my website. And it gives consumers all sorts of great options. Moms really like that, fast shipping for when Friday you realize you need this bag on Monday morning to carry your pump. So Amazon serves a purpose for me as a business, but then I create also really close relationships with customers who choose to come through my website where I can have a more personal touch.
Do you specify at this point, because you have such a control and understanding as much as anybody can, obviously everything changes. Are you thoughtful in terms of your assortment? Like, these bags are only for Amazon. If anybody wants premium, deluxe, bells and whistles, they have to come to me.
So one of the things I did very early on is just say it's going to be the same everywhere. I offer a true full lifetime warranty on all of my bags. I replace bags that someone has from 9 years ago. Like, even if I don't have the bag, I will replace the bag with the equivalent now. I offer that for the Amazon customers. I offer that for mine. And my mantra has been, being a mom and being a working mom is hard enough as it is. I am here to just be as easy and to support you as absolute much as I can. I have worked that into my business plan so I can do that. So I don't differentiate. And I think the mom customers have been really amazing about supporting me through my website when they have the time and they want the connection. But I also really respect that some people just really need the bag the next day for a work trip. And functionally, that's going to work better for them. So, I feel like it's naturally fallen into place that I have a really good self-differentiation on where to shop. And most people will come direct to me. They want to engage through the site. But I love having that Amazon relationship because they're always, 10 steps ahead on the fulfillment and shipping in a way that I never, ever will be able to touch. So I think that it's been really nice. And you asked about big retailers. I did Buy Buy Baby back when they were around for a short period of time. It's just it did not suit me. The hoops that a small business has to go through in terms of your inventory. And I really didn't have any customer touch whatsoever. So it really, at the end of the day, I have been focused on my website, Amazon, and then there are still some durable medical equipment providers and small boutiques as well that carry our bags. But it's been mostly e-commerce since the beginning.
So basically, you have stayed away from any quote unquote big box retail. You've stayed away from Macy's, or even when now that Macy's has drop ship or Walmart has drop ship, you haven't even gotten involved.
Concerted effort strategy to absolutely stay away from that, because I really feel that the sort of niche community that I'm in, I have a direct link to, and they know where to find me. They know it took time to build that up. I really, in many ways, created the space in terms of the assortment that I offered, and people have learned to come to me. They can find me. I built up that SEO. I am on social media all the time. We've started traveling around and doing more in-person events again. And so I really think that my efforts are better spent there than in retail, because it's not about just having something on the shelf that someone passively engages with or sees. I really have a deeper community relationship with my customers. So in my opinion, you can't do it all. You shouldn't, spread yourself too thin. Right. And I found this wonderful, happy place where I can really have that personal touch with customers, even on a mass scale.
So at this point, 12 years later at this point, where are you at and what's to come?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, it's kind of come all full circle. So advocacy has always been interwoven in all we do. Like, we donate a lot of the proceeds to milk banks from the bags, and we've done all sorts of different advocacy events with different organizations. During the pandemic, this is really cool. We actually helped repurpose a particular type of breast pump that could be used in reverse mode for ventilation, for ventilators. So we collected them from around the country and cleaned them and helped this group from MIT that was making We've had this amazing advocacy passion, but they've been more one-off opportunities. Yeah. And so I've had this dream of something bigger and broader to take all that. I've talked to so many thousands of people, and everyone says very similar things about the working mom experience. And so I thought, what am I doing with all that knowledge to make turn it around and echo it back out to the people in charge in workplaces that need to enhance their support for working moms. So this is culminating this year in a book. I got my first book deal. And I'm publishing a book, Go Ask Your Mothers, One Step for Managers to Support Working Moms for Team Success, coming out in August. Amazing. And it's really training, a roadmap, a guide from the interviews and the stories of these moms over the last decade on what managers can do right now without Congress, without a lot of money, maybe even without their CEO's support. What can they do right now to make the workplace better for moms in pumping, mental health, flexible work, post-pandemic, sort of era? What is it that they can do? And I'm really excited that somehow I've managed to merge everything these wonderful customers have told me through the relationship building into, again, a way to echo that back out in a bigger, broader way. So I'm really excited. And I'm certain this will just be the next step in many more steps of advocacy for that reason.
This is so amazing. Sarah, how can people learn more about you, find your bags, follow you, and all that good stuff?
Absolutely. So sarahwellsbags.com for the bags and goaskyourmothers.com for the book. And we're Sarah Wells Bags on all social media platforms. So come check us out and see what we've got to offer.
Beautiful. Sarah, this has been so enlightening. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast. And I'm honored and flattered that I was able to, at least in some archival way, be part of your inception story, but I'm so excited to at least be part of the narrative as to what's to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review and follow us on every single platform at Handbag Designer. Thanks so much. See you next time.